This is Kathy from Gadgets Top 321, and in today's video I'm going to be taking a look at Noodler's Black Swan and English Roses. I'll be testing it in a variety of pens and nib sizes ranging from a Pilot Extra Fine to a 1.5 stub nib. And I've got my Sailor LaCool pictured here because I often talk bad about this pen. I've had some bad experiences with it, but it's performing really well with this ink. So we'll talk about that a little more when I get to that pen. But I'm going to begin with my Pilot 78G with an extra fine nib. Now, I've been looking forward to trying this ink for a long time. I got a sample of it recently, and this is just one of those iconic Noodler's inks that everybody talks about. All right, this isn't bad. The line that it's putting down is really extra fine. So, let me see. I'm not going to call this nice. There's a little more feedback than I prefer. So I'm just going to put not scratchy. But it is on the borderline. This would be okay to use in a planner, but the only thing is that is really extra fine. Next, I've got my Sailor Pro Gear Slim with a fine nib. Oh, this is much better. If you're the kind of person that likes to hear the scritchy scratchy sound on the paper as you write, but it's not so much feedback that it's unpleasant, this is nice. And it's just enough bolder than the extra fine that it's really easy to read. I like that. And it's a nice color. Alright, next the Sailor LaCool Medium Fine. This has a different nib. This is a stainless steel nib. The Pro Gear Slim was a gold nib, but it's also a different shape nib. It's made differently, and the tipping is different. I've mentioned before, and a lot of inks that I try, I'm not fond of this nib. I love the pen. I love the shape of the pen, and the plastic is nice and feels robust, but surprisingly, with this ink, oh, I had a little bit of a skip there. Of course, now that I'm bragging on it. With this ink, it feels like the nib is shaped differently. I don't know how to explain that. A lot of times, I'm going to put nice on this one. A lot of times when I use this ink, it just feels oddly shaped. I was listening to Mike Madison from Ink Dependence, his live stream a few weeks ago, and he and his wife Audrey were talking about Aurora nibs, and he said some of them feel really nice, excuse me, but he's got some, he didn't know how to describe it. He said they just don't feel fresh. And that kind of resonated with me because that's this pen right here. I've tried smoothing it, and it's not that it's not smooth. It just feels weird. But with this ink, it worked. So I found an ink to use with it. Next, I'm using my Platinum 3776 with a medium nib. Now, This medium nib, I can already see the shading. I really like this. This is a nice ink for this size of nib. And there was feedback, again, like the Pro Gear Slim, if you like that scritchy scratchy sound and you don't mind just a little bit of feedback, this is really nice. And the shading, the nibs are getting wide enough that you can really see the shading in this. All right, let me see how the color is matching up. Yeah, not bad. Next, I've got my Kaweco Perkeo All Black with a medium nib. Yeah, this is just a little bit smoother than the previous nib. Probably because it's a little bit wetter. And so I'm gonna say this one's smooth. Very pleasant. And I've been noticing on my writing samples on other papers, the shading is just really nice. All right, next I've got my Pilot Metropolitan with a cursive medium nib. Better make sure I'm in focus. This is nice and smooth. But this is a little bit drier than the previous two mediums, and I think I prefer the previous two more. I get more of the darker tones. Yeah, I get more of the darker colors in there. The Metropolitan is mostly the lighter tones. And finally, I've got my Jinhao X750 with a 1.5 stub nib. Very smooth, very satisfying to write with. All right. I think it's been really cloudy and rainy here recently, and the weather's starting to cool off just slightly. We're at that time of year where it's bouncing back and forth, but I guess it's got me thinking about fall. I'm leaning away from my green inks that I really liked this summer, and I'm starting to get into these maroon inks. I tried Colorverse Dark Energy recently, and I bought a bottle of this yesterday. I really like this, but I think I'll compare those two in just a minute. While that dries, let's take a look at some of the other writing samples. Okay, let me pull out the Dark Energy and compare those two. You see that Dark Energy has more brown to it, and Black Swan and English Roses has a little more brightness. You can see on the color smears, looks like it's a little bit wetter also. And that makes sense because Colorverse Dark Energy is a little more saturated, and it's got quite a bit of sheen to it. I guess it's like a grayish type sheen. And this just has really nice shading. All the pens. Now my 78G Extra Fine was a little bit too fine. It wasn't smooth enough to use to write a whole page. when I got done writing this line, I was like, yeah, I'm ready to stop writing with this pen and nib or ink and nib combination. But the Pro Gear Slim on this ARC notebook paper was really nice. And I was really surprised when I got to the LaCool. I liked it even better than the Pro Gear Slim, surprisingly. Everything was just nice and smooth, and look how beautiful. It's kind of cloudy outside right now, but just look how beautiful and rich that stub nib looks. Okay, on the Rhodia paper, my 78G Extra Fine was scratchy. I was kind of surprised. The Pro Gear Slim felt dry and it had quite a bit of feedback to it. It was usable for me, but I put a little sad face beside it to let me know that it wasn't a nice amount of feedback. It was, Now, the LaCool was nice and had some feedback, but it was enjoyable to use. All the mediums I just really liked, and it's just, you can see the shading there. Just enough shading that it's really nice. One of the things I wanted to mention here, let me back up to let me show the back of this ARC notebook paper. Even on the stub nib, very little or no bleed through. And look at the side strokes, no feathering. It was better. It did better than X Feather. Let me flip over and let you see. X Feather bled through just on the stub, but look at the side strokes, the feathering that you see, and in the stub nib, but not with Black Swan and English Roses. That kind of stood out to me, surprised me. All right, on my 20-pound copy paper, I didn't like it on the copy paper. Bled through quite a bit. And that's usually not too big of an issue because if you're writing on copy paper, you're usually not writing on both sides. But on my medium nibs that I really loved on the other papers, it was just too wet, and it did want to kind of spread out and feather a little bit. But the LaCool, let me get my paper situated. The LaCool was nice. So, and the reason I started using the LaCool in these writing samples is now that Sailor is offering what are those called? The Compass. It's the rounded end version of this pen, and they're offering just a rainbow of demonstrator colors that has this same nib. So don't totally write it off. You may have to experiment a little bit and see which of your inks works the best with it. But if you have a bad experience with one, don't give up on it. Okay, on my Leuchtturm, just so the word that keeps coming to mind is rich. It's just so saturated and beautiful. All right. Oh, let me see if I can compare it. You can see there's Dark Energy, and you can see this has a little more brightness to it than the Dark Energy. Dark Energy leans a little more brown. Okay, let's see. And back to Tomoe River paper. Let me see. I don't see any sheen, but this is just a beautiful shading ink. And my LaCool skipped a little bit. It may have just been because I had the lid off quite a bit. And these are dip tested, so I don't have ink in a converter. It's just been dipped. but I'm impressed. I can see why people talk about this ink so much. If you found this video helpful, please give me a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel.